My 30-year-old wife, Emily, sat across from me, her beauty highlighted by the soft glow of the upscale restaurant's dim lights. I had planned this evening meticulously, every detail meant to make her feel special. The crisp white tablecloths, the aroma of exquisite dishes, and even the delicate diamond necklace I had bought her as a surprise. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. Emily had been quiet all evening. Our usual lively conversations were replaced by a cold, almost forced politeness. It was strange. Normally, we couldn't keep our eyes off each other. But tonight, she barely looked at me, her gaze wandering around the room as if searching for something or someone. I tried to ignore it, telling myself she was simply tired. After the main course, as I poured her another glass of wine, Emily finally spoke. Her voice, usually confident and clear, trembled slightly. "Daniel," she began, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth, "there's something I need to tell you." A chill ran down my spine. "What is it, Emily?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. Was she finally ready to talk about starting a family? We'd been discussing it for a while, and I was hoping we were getting closer to taking that step. But Emily's eyes told a different story as she finally met my gaze. They were filled with a mix of determination and fear. "I need space," she said, pausing for a deep breath. "I need to explore parts of myself, outside of our relationship." I blinked, my mind struggling to grasp what she was saying. "Explore? What do you mean, Emily?" I asked, my voice rising involuntarily. She glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with my reaction. "Please, keep your voice down," she whispered, her eyes darting towards the other diners. "I need to see other people, Daniel. I need to figure out who I am without being tied down." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mouth went dry, and I felt my heart pound in my chest. "You want to see other people?" I repeated, barely recognizing my own voice. "Are you telling me you want to date other men?" Emily nodded, her face flushed. "Yes," she said quietly. "I hope you can understand. This isn't about leaving you, it's about finding myself." Everything seemed to blur. The elegant restaurant, the soft background music, all of it faded away, leaving just her words echoing in my ears. "Finding yourself?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "And you think seeing other men is the way to do that?" She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "I love you, Daniel. I really do. But I can't ignore these feelings anymore. I need this time." I set my napkin down slowly, feeling the room close in around me. I couldn't stay there any longer. Without another word, I stood, neatly placing my napkin on the table. Emily looked up, her eyes wide with panic. "Daniel, please, where are you going?" I shook my head, unable to find the words. "I need some air," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "You should probably take a cab home." With that, I turned and walked out, the weight of her confession crushing me as I made my way through the restaurant, barely noticing the curious glances of the other patrons. The night air hit me like a shock, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had no idea where I was going, I just knew I couldn't stay. The streets were mostly empty as I walked, the cold night air biting at my face. My thoughts raced, a chaotic mess of confusion, anger, and sadness. How had it come to this? How could Emily want to see other people when we had shared so much? I wandered aimlessly, my feet moving without direction while my mind kept replaying her words, each one cutting deeper than the last. Eventually, I found myself at a small park, the kind of place we used to visit together during lazy weekends. I sat down on a bench, the darkness providing a strange sense of comfort. I pulled out my phone and stared at it, tempted to call Emily, to try to understand more, but what was the point? She had been clear, painfully so. I needed answers, but I knew I wouldn't find them that night. Instead, I decided to call my best friend, Michael. He picked up after a few rings, his voice groggy. It was late, after all. "Dan? What's going on, man? It's almost midnight." "Mike," I said, my voice cracking. "Emily wants to see other people." There was a silence on the line, then a sigh. "Shitman. Where are you?" "I don't know. Somewhere in the city," I replied, glancing around at the dark park. I I don't know what to do. Stay there, Michael said, his voice firm. I'm coming to get you. Just sit tight, all right? I hung up and let the phone rest in my hands, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I wasn't ready to face what was happening, but at least I wouldn't have to do it alone. Michael had always been there for me, through college, through my wedding, through every good and bad moment in my life. I just hoped he had some advice, some way to make sense of the chaos swirling in my head. Not long after, Michael's car pulled up to the curb. He got out and walked towards me, his expression filled with concern. Without a word, he sat down next to me on the bench. "Talk to me, Dan," he said quietly. I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "She said she needs space," I began, my voice shaking. "She wants to explore who she is, outside of our marriage. She wants to see other men, Mike." Michael frowned, his brows knitting together. "That doesn't make any sense. I mean, you two were always so solid. Where's this even coming from?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a pang of despair. "I thought we were okay. Sure, we had some tough times, but who doesn't? I didn't think it was this bad." Michael nodded, staring out at the dark, empty park. "Maybe she's going through something, Dan. Something that has nothing to do with you. People get lost sometimes, you know? They think they need to blow up their life to find meaning. But why us?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why now? We talked about starting a family, about our future together. Now it all feels like it's slipping away." Michael put a hand on my shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Look, I don't have the answers. But I do know one thing, you can't just let her walk all over you. You have to decide what you're willing to accept. You deserve someone who's all in, not half committed." His words hung in the air, a mixture of truth and pain. I knew he was right, but it didn't make it any easier. I had loved Emily for so long, the thought of letting her go was unbearable. But could I really stand by while she found herself with other men? Could I be the man who waited in the shadows, hoping she'd come back? We sat there in silence for a while, the cold air biting at my skin, but Michael's presence made it a little more bearable. Finally, he spoke again. "Look, why don't you crash at my place tonight? It's better than going back home to an empty house." I nodded, grateful for his support. Yeah, I think I'll take you up on that." We stood, and as we walked back to his car, I realized that whatever happened next, I couldn't face it alone. I needed help, and I needed to start figuring out what kind of future I wanted, whether it was with Emily or without her. The morning after, I woke up on Michael's couch, the sunlight streaming through the curtains and reminding me of everything I had to face. For a moment, I wished it was all just a bad dream, that Emily hadn't said those awful words, that everything was still the way it used to be. But the empty feeling in my chest quickly brought me back to reality. Michael handed me a cup of coffee as he sat down across from me. "How are you holding up, man?" he asked, concern evident in his eyes. I took a deep breath, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "I don't know, Mike. I still can't wrap my head around it. I mean, how do you even deal with something like this? She wants space, she wants to see other people?" My voice trailed off, and I felt a lump forming in my throat. Michael gave me a sympathetic nod. "I get it. It's a lot to process. But you need to think about what you want, Dan. You can't just let her decide everything for both of you." His words resonated with me. For so long, I had been trying to make Emily happy, to do everything for our relationship. But now, it felt like none of that mattered. It was clear that I had to start thinking about myself, about what I needed. And maybe that meant making some tough decisions. After breakfast, Michael drove me back home. The house felt different when I walked in, like a place that was no longer mine. I stood in the doorway, taking it all in, the silence echoing through the empty rooms. It was a house we had built together, a home that held so many memories. But now, it felt like a stranger's place, as if the love and warmth that had once filled it were gone. I wandered into the living room, my eyes catching a picture of us on the mantel. It was taken on our first anniversary, Emily and I smiling, her arms wrapped around me as we stood by the beach. I picked up the frame and stared at it, the memories rushing back. We had been so happy then, so sure of each other. It hurt to think that she no longer felt that way. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Emily. "I hope you're okay. We need to talk when you're ready." I stared at the screen, my emotions swirling between anger, sadness, and confusion. What did she expect me to say? That I was okay with all of this? That I understood? I set the phone down and walked away, not ready to deal with her yet. Instead, I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. I went for a run. I needed to clear my mind, to get away from the house and all the memories it held. As I ran through the neighborhood, the cold air stung my lungs, but it felt good. It felt real. I pushed myself harder, my feet pounding against the pavement, each step away to release the pain that had built up inside me. By the time I stopped, I was exhausted, my legs burning and my heart pounding. But for the first time since Emily's confession, I felt like I could breathe again. When I got back home, I knew I couldn't avoid Emily forever. I had to face her, to figure out what this meant for both of us. I couldn't keep running away, no matter how much it hurt. I took a shower, letting the hot water wash away the sweat and the fear that had been clinging to me since that night in the restaurant. Later that afternoon, I sent Emily a message. "We need to talk. Come over tonight." It was time to face whatever came next, even if I wasn't ready for it. Because the truth was, I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I needed answers, and I needed to decide if this was something I could live with, or if it was time to let go. That evening, I sat in the living room, waiting for Emily to arrive. The air felt heavy, the silence pressing down on me as I tried to prepare myself for whatever was coming. I kept glancing at the clock, my heart pounding each time the minute hand moved closer to the hour we had agreed upon. I knew this conversation could change everything, and that thought terrified me. The doorbell rang, and I took a deep breath before getting up to answer it. Emily stood there, looking unsure, her eyes searching mine for some sign of what was about to happen. I stepped aside, letting her in without saying anything. She walked in slowly, her gaze sweeping over the familiar surroundings as if she were seeing them for the first time in years. We sat down across from each other, the coffee table between us feeling like a chasm. I waited for her to speak, but she hesitated, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and determination. "Daniel," she began softly, "I know this is hard. I know what I said hurt you. But I need you to understand that this is something I have to do, for me." I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I understand that you need something, Emily. But what I don't understand is why it has to involve seeing other people. We've always been a team. Why can't we figure this out together?" She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's not about you, Daniel. It's about me. I feel like I've lost myself somewhere along the way. I need to find out who I am again, and I can't do that while I'm stuck in the same routine. I love you, but I need space to grow." Her words stung, and I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. Space to grow? By being with other men? How is that supposed to help us? How am I supposed to just sit here and wait while you explore? My voice cracked, the hurt seeping through despite my efforts to stay calm. Emily looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "I wish I could explain it better. I wish there was a way for you to understand without it hurting you. But I can't ignore these feelings, Daniel. I need to do this." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath as I tried to find the right words. "And what about me, Emily? What am I supposed to do while you're out there figuring yourself out? Do I just put my life on hold and hope you come back?" My voice was barely above a whisper, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't want you to wait for me if you can't. I understand if you need to move on. But I hope that, in time, you'll see that this is what's best for both of us. I love you, Daniel. I really do. But I need this." The silence that followed felt endless. I could feel my heart breaking, the future I had imagined for us crumbling away. I wanted to scream, to beg her to stay, to fight for what we had. But deep down, I knew that if I forced her to stay, it wouldn't be the same. She needed this, and no matter how much it hurt, I had to let her go. I nodded slowly, my voice barely a whisper. "If this is what you need, Emily, then I can't stop you. But I can't promise I'll be here when you're ready to come back. I need to think about what's best for me too. Emily wiped at her eyes, her face crumpling as she tried to hold back her tears. I understand, she said, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know any other way. We sat there in silence, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, Emily stood up, her movements slow and hesitant. I should go, she said quietly, her voice barely audible. I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak. I watched as she walked to the door, pausing for a moment before opening it. She looked back at me, her eyes filled with sadness. Goodbye, Daniel. I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat. Goodbye, Emily, I managed, my voice cracking. And just like that, she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her, leaving me alone in the silence of our once shared home. The days that followed were a blur. The silence of the house felt suffocating, the absence of Emily like a gaping hole in my life. I tried to keep myself busy, work, errands, anything to avoid thinking about her. But no matter how much I distracted myself, her absence was always there, a constant reminder of what I had lost. I spent the first few nights on the couch, unable to bring myself to sleep in the bed we had shared. It was too much, the memories too painful. I found myself replaying our last conversation over and over, wondering if there was something I could have said or done differently to change the outcome. But each time, I came to the same conclusion. This was Emily's decision, and nothing I could have said would have made her stay. One afternoon, Michael came by, unannounced. He knocked on the door, and when I opened it, he gave me a sympathetic smile. Hey, I thought you might need some company, he said, holding up a six-pack of beer. I managed a small smile, stepping aside to let him in. Thanks, I appreciate it. We sat in the living room, the TV on in the background, neither of us really paying attention to it. Michael handed me a beer and cracked open one for himself. How are you holding up? He asked, his voice gentle. I sighed, staring at the can in my hands. Honestly, I don't know. Some moments, I feel okay. Other times, it just hits me all over again. I keep wondering if I made the right choice, if I should have fought harder. Michael shook his head. You did what you had to do, Dan. You gave her what she wanted, but you also stood up for yourself. You can't make someone stay if they don't want to. And you deserve someone who's fully committed to you. His words were comforting, but it didn't make the pain go away. I knew he was right, but letting go of the future I had imagined with Emily was harder than I had thought. It wasn't just about losing her. It was about losing the life we had planned together. The family, the dreams, the love that I thought would last forever. Over the next few weeks, I slowly started to find a new routine. I returned to my hobbies, spending more time cycling and going to the gym. It helped, the physical exertion a way to release the emotions I couldn't put into words. I even started going out with Michael and a few other friends, trying to reconnect with the world outside of my heartbreak. One evening, after a particularly long bike ride, I found myself at a small cafe. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the people pass by. There was a sense of calmness in that moment, a realization that life was still going on, even if it felt like mine had stopped. I took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the coffee cup seep into my hands, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a small glimmer of hope. It was then that I decided I needed to move forward. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of what could have been. Emily had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. I needed to let go, not just of her, but of the future I had imagined with her. I needed to create the new future for myself, one that wasn't defined by her absence. That night, I went home and packed away the photos of us, the little mementos of our life together. I wasn't ready to throw them away, but I needed them out of sight. It was a small step, but it felt like progress, a way to reclaim my space and start building something new. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be days when the pain felt unbearable, when I missed her so much it hurt. But there would also be days like today, when I could see a way forward, however small. And that was enough for now. Months passed, and slowly, life began to feel more manageable. The initial shock and pain of losing Emily had dulled, replaced by a bittersweet acceptance. It wasn't that I didn't miss her. I still did, every single day, but I had learned to live with that ache, to let it be a part of me without letting it define me. I found myself reconnecting with parts of my life that I had let slip during our relationship. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I dusted off my old easel, set it up in the spare room, and spent hours losing myself in the colors and the canvas. It was therapeutic, a way to express the emotions that words couldn't capture. One day, as I was finishing a painting, Michael called. "Hey, Dan, a few of us are getting together tonight at the new bar downtown. You should come. It'll be fun," he said, his voice filled with a sense of hopefulness. He had been encouraging me to get out more, to meet new people, to embrace the possibility of moving on. I hesitated for a moment, glancing at the unfinished painting before nodding to myself. "Yeah, all right. I could use a night out," I replied. That evening, I found myself in the bustling bar, the noise of laughter and conversation filling the space around me. Michael waved me over to a table where a few familiar faces greeted me with smiles. It felt good to be out, to be surrounded by friends who genuinely cared about me. As the night went on, I found myself laughing, the heaviness I had been carrying for so long lifting, even if just for a little while. At one point, I noticed a woman sitting alone at the bar, her eyes scanning the room as if she were looking for someone. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small smile. There was a time, not too long ago, when I would have looked away, not ready to even consider the idea of meeting someone new. But something in me had shifted. Maybe it was the months of healing, maybe it was the realization that I deserved to be happy again. I found myself smiling back. I excused myself from the table and walked over to her. "Hi, I'm Daniel," I said, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. She looked up, her smile widening. "Hi, Daniel. I'm Claire." We talked for a while, the conversation flowing easily. She was kind, with a warm laugh that made me feel at ease. It wasn't like I was looking for anything serious, but it felt good to connect with someone, to feel a spark that I hadn't felt in a long time. As the night went on, we exchanged numbers, and I left the bar feeling lighter than I had in months. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew that I still had a lot of healing to do, that there would be days when the pain of losing Emily would resurface. But I also knew that I was ready to embrace whatever came next, whether it was a new relationship, new friendships, or just finding joy in the little things again. I went into the spare room and looked at the painting I had been working on. It was almost done. A landscape of a place that didn't exist, a mix of colors and shapes that represented the journey I had been on. I picked up the brush and added the final touches, a smile tugging at my lips. This was my life now, imperfect, unpredictable, but mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video, because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.